we don't have much time, so I thank the second panel, and I invite our dear guest, Mr. Silvio Gonzalo, to join me up here. Are you going to speak from down there? Okay. Then, thank you. If you want, you can. I will proceed to my part, which is sort of a summation and suggestions about steps ahead. Sometimes people in the field forget the importance of what they're doing, the greater importance. We get bogged down in technicalities. I would like to say that the issue we are discussing today, communicating democratic and human rights values of Europe to the Middle East, but not only Middle East, other closed societies, is the 21st century war, one that cannot afford to lose. September 2014 was a rude awakening for many world leaders who had got accustomed to the delusion of unipolarity after the Cold War. The good guys have won, the bad guys have been eliminated. It's just a question of time before they join us. The month began with the NATO summit, which changed the organization from a collective security to a collective defense, actually defending borders, Baltic states, Poland. And it ended with the summit in the United Nations, where the principal topic was things like the Islamic State doubling up huge parts of Iraq and Syria. And the realization set in that, no, we do have enemies. Open societies do have enemies. And they're powerful. And in many cases, they're succeeding. Matt Barrows of the U.S. National Intelligence Council, that sits on top of the 16 intelligence organizations in the U.S., did a study, Global Trends 2030, further bad news for open societies, that power is shifting away from them, further to the east. Now, if you can't win that battle now, it's going to be a lot harder in 2030. And if you don't win that battle now and the trend continues, so will the dysfunctional state of large swaths of territory, not just the Middle East, from deep Africa to the gates of India. And one recent study suggested that you would have 600 million people having to move because of economic despair. If 15% of them head to Europe, you have a 90 million immigration problem that's larger than the size of the population of Germany. It's already beginning to create problems. There are parts of Malmö, Sweden, where a white policewoman cannot walk for fear of Islamic gangs. And the mayor changes a sports club to sexual segregation. And in support of the votes of those new immigrants, he says if Jews don't like it, they can go back to Israel. This is in liberal Sweden, in Malmö, 20 minutes train ride from Copenhagen. That invites a reaction. The reaction is a neo-racist party that has grown from 7% to 13%, now last count 17.5% in polls. And it's become the arbiter and decision maker between the two flanks in the Swedish parliament, and has, as of today, made Sweden ungovernable. A major country. Now you can think of UKIP in the UK, you can think of Guillaumin in France. So you're seeing how the spiral is working. The other side is succeeding very well in communicating its values inside democratic societies, driving one side to strengthen the hard right, and the hard rights actions aggravates that process, and the spiral goes on. This is a real threat. When we talk about the European Parliament, where we are sitting, gradually increasing deputies who are against the very concept of a Europe, a united Europe. That is a concern, and we cannot afford to let this trend continue. But why have we failed? If Iran and China block internet, satellite broadcast, it's natural their closed society is afraid of open communication. But on the Arab networks, television and internet, on the Russian language networks, that are open and free, how come enemies of open societies are beating the daylight out of the values of open societies? There are wonderful things happening, of course, in the Arab world, as Mr. Ben-Shamsi said. But I've followed 10 radical Arab channels and looked at how their messages are transmitted and repeated inside mosques at the heart of London, heart of UK. They are doing something which we should be doing. They are looking at a two-step flow of communication. Not just mass media, not just one-to-many communication, but community building. Communities that are the key to transmitting values. Wilbur Schramm, the first person called a theorist of communication, and later the person who set up the first degree programs with the university degree program with the name communication in it, said you can impart information, but you cannot change attitudes and deep values unless there is a second step to the flow of communication. I think Western societies have understood this less than totalitarians and authoritarians. Mao used that. He could have had very cheap shortwave radios for everybody to listen to his speeches, but he wanted to have them blared out of megaphones in the center of communes so that the party would engage the people in the discussion and deepen and implant the values. That is what those imams in the mosques in the UK are doing. How do we do that? Fred Andon is an expert in doing that sort of thing. We have to take all of the activity which already exists in closed societies, as Mr. Ben-Shamsi said, but it's in a state of fluff. It's not something solid, it's vapor. It comes and goes. It can pull down authority, it's proven. Egypt, Tunisia, but it cannot resurrect authority in its stead. Where is Wael Wanay today? Where are all of those brave people in Al-Tahrir? Are they really playing a role in shaping Egyptian politics, even in Tunisia? No. Why not? Because they haven't built a community. A community is something more durable. Extension of public diplomacy, which cannot do the job, because it comes, as many of the speakers said, from governments and policymakers, and therefore they're mistrusted, and their message is taken as propaganda. And language services, BBC, Radio 5, which are doing a magnificent job, and if anybody doubts that they do a great job, they should listen to Václav Havel, who impeached President Clinton. Don't shut this off, because that was our source of news and information in the Cold War years, and we need it again. But again, it's not enough unless it's plugged into and complemented by communities that are cultivated on the net. There are techniques of doing this. We shouldn't get too excited about quantitative measures. Old indexing worked that way. Now search engine optimization is also looking at ways of looking at quality of communication. How much stickiness, how much persistence, how much moving of messages and communication peer-to-peer in the third leg of communication and stabilizing that into communities. And I agree with Mr. Ben-Shamsi, don't underestimate the quality of activists in closed societies who want to build those communities. Women's rights, labor rights, entrepreneur networks, ethnic rights, which includes diversity, respect for diversity, and pluralism. All of these have passionate adherence to those values inside closed communities. And if we develop communities which have one side straddle the divide between open and closed societies, not government-to-people communication, but people-to-people communication, but supported by governments, and build those pipelines so that these communities that have advanced and have lots of great examples of how problems that beset people in closed societies, problems of injustice, poverty, are resolved in open societies. How answerability, transparency makes the life of an entrepreneur, the life of a woman, the life of a member of labor a much better experience. How these values have ended centuries of war and poverty in Europe. I think if we can do that, if that could become an agenda for Europe, cultivate communities of values, then we have a chance of winning this war. Otherwise, whenever you have a war of values between values of open societies and closed societies, if one side is sure about the values and passionate about it, and the other side is not, yes, who's going to win? Thank you very much.